everyone, welcome back to DGMC, Diwan-e-Ghalib, Meri Zubani. To all our returning viewers, welcome back. We are glad you could join us again. And for the new viewers, we are delighted you discovered the podcast and decided to tune in for the first time. Now, if you were with me in the previous episode, you know that currently we are going through Ghazal 21 from Diwan-e-Ghalib. Ye na thi Humaari Qismat. We've already posted impressions for the first 10 couplets. Today we are going to get into the 11th share or couplet, which is the last couplet of this ghazal, also called the Maqta of the ghazal. Now, as always, I'm going to read the couplet first and then we are going to get into the translation and impressions of that couplet. So, this is how it goes. Ye Masaail-e-Tasawwuf. ये मसाइल-ए-तसव्वुफ, ये तेरा बयां गालिब. ये मसाइल-ए-तसव्वुफ, ये तेरा बयां गालिब, तुझे हम वली समझते जो न बाद अख्वार होता. So before we get into the impression, let's do a quick translation of this couplet. ये मसाइल-ए-तसव्वुफ. Masail is questions, tasawwuf is mysticism, Sufism, wisdom of some kind, right? And Bayaan is description. So the first line is Ghalib, these questions about Sufism and mysticism and the way you describe them, right? Second line, Tujhe hum wali samajhte, we would have considered you a saint. Jo na baad akhwar hota, had you not been addicted to drinking wine. So that is a very quick approximate translation, but we are going to get into these new words that we are encountering at DGMC for the first time. If you've been with DGMC, you know whenever we encounter a new word at DGMC for the first time, we do get into the word itself, try to explore it, try to get its essence, not only restricted to the couplet we are encountering it in, but otherwise also above and beyond that. So let's pick up the few key words from this couplet and explore them a little. So the first word we want to explore is Masaail. Now this translates to questions, propositions, problems. अब ये एक ऐसा लफ्ज है जो कि उर्दू ज़बान में and Islamic culture में frequently use किया जाता है. You come across phrases like नमाज के मसाइल और तलाक के मसाइल, कुर्बानी के मसाइल, रूहानी मसाइल, right? So related to different aspects of the culture or religion or any phenomena with respect to life, right? And its ins and outs. So let's explore the word through some share to grasp its essence. अब ये पहला शेर मोहसिन असरार का. सहर होगी तो देखेंगे, सहर होगी तो देखेंगे कि हैं क्या क्या मसाइल. जरा सी देर सोने दो मुझे, नींद आ रही है. So the approximate translation is, once the morning comes, I will get into the various questions and problems. For now, let me sleep for a while. I am sleepy and tired. So it is night, right? So the questions can wait for the morning. Let me sleep a little as of now. शहरयार का ये शेर. सारी दुनिया के मसाइल, सारी दुनिया के मसाइल यूं मुझे दरपेश हैं. सारी दुनिया के मसाइल यूं मुझे दरपेश हैं, तेरा गम काफी ना हो जैसे गुजर औकात को. So the basic translation is that all the questions, perplexing problems, perplexing questions, of this world are being presented to me, are being placed before me for consideration, as if your uh, the pain I have received because of you, or the hurt that I have received because of you, was not enough to sustain me. फहमी बदायूं का ये शेर प्यारा शेर है. फिक्रो मसाइल यादे जाना, फिक्रो मसाइल यादे जाना, गरम हवाएं ठंडा पानी. So the basic translation is fikro masail. So all these worries around the perplexing questions and problems of this world, and memories of the beloved. They are as if hot winds and cool water. So all the problems and all the anxiety caused by problems of the world are like hot winds, and then memories of the beloved are like cool water. Now let's move on to the next word, tasawwuf. So tasawwuf translates to Sufism or Islamic mysticism, spirituality, devotion. So for tasawwuf, let's get into some शेर to again grasp its essence. So ये पहला शेर है जाकिर खान जाकिर का. ए कलंदर आ, ए कलंदर आ, तसव्वुफ में सवर कर रक्स कर. ए कलंदर आ, तसव्वुफ में सवर कर रक्स कर, इश्क के सब खारजारों से गुजर कर रक्स कर. So Kalandar is any mystic, Sufi, wise man, wise man or a dervish, right? And then Kharzaro, which is another keyword in this share, is a field of thorns. So basically the approximate translation of the couplet is, so in your wisdom, come decorated with your wisdom, and then pass through all the thorn fields of love dancing. फरहत एहसास का ये शेर. मुझ तक है मेरे दुख के तसव्वुफ का सिलसिला, मुझ तक है मेरे दुख के तसव्वुफ का सिलसिला, एक जख्म में मुरीद तो एक जख्म पीर में. So basically the approximate translation is, so the entire wisdom that I'm gaining from the pain that I suffer is limited to me and me alone, or probably I just need myself alone to get this wisdom, because I am the pupil, I am the teacher. And Lucky Farooqi हसरत का ये शेर. हसरत इबादतों के तसव्वुफ में होके गुम, हसरत इबादतों के तसव्वुफ में होके गुम, काबे से सोमनाथ मेरे साथ साथ चल. Beautiful couplet. What it translates to is, in the wisdom of praying, or after attaining the wisdom of praying, come with me and make this journey from Kaaba to Somnath. Kaaba is a mosque, Somnath is a temple. So basically, once you get the wisdom around faith and praying, you realize all religious places are the same, and it will make you travel from one religious place to another one with the same faith, with the same respect and reverence. You will not be restricted to just one place of worship. All places of worship in your wisdom, you will realize, are the same. महमूद इश्की का ये शेर. लोबा के धुएं में तसव्वुफ के जिक्र पर, लोबा के धुएं में तसव्वुफ के जिक्र पर, पौधों की तरह हिलते रहे अहले अंजुमन. So they were totally engaged, they were totally mesmerized, they were totally involved in this gathering where there were being talks of wisdom, Sufism, and mysticism. So that is tasawwuf, right? So after all these share, the basic essence of it is anything to do with wisdom, anything to do with mysticism. It can be related to religion, it might not be related to religion. Tasawwuf goes beyond just religion. It is a wisdom one would attain basis personal experience, right? So that takes care of tasawwuf. Now let's move on to the next word, bayaan. Now this is not a complex word, right? Bayaan is frequently used. On a normal day, bayaan is equivalent to describing something. And for poets, in Urdu poetry, bayaan is not used loosely because this is their claim to fame. आपका बयान जितना अच्छा है आप उतने अच्छे शायर हो. आपके बयान में अगर असर है तो आप अच्छे शायर हो. अगर आपके बयान बेअसर है तो आप अच्छे शायर नहीं हो. सो बयान कलोकली तो डिस्क्रिप्शन के लिए यूज किया जाता है, बट शायरी में it has its own place because it is a metric by which you measure the ability of an Urdu poet. So बयां के लिए let's get into a few share to grasp its essence. Let's start with John Elia का ये शेर. मेरी हर बात बेअसर ही रही. मेरी हर बात बेअसर ही रही. नुक्स है कुछ मेरे बयां में क्या. So the approximate translation is all that I said, all that I described, all that I wrote, all that I narrated seemed to be ineffective. Is there a problem? Is there a fault in my bayan or in my description? Because like I said, if your bayan is good, it will be effective, right? That is the way you measure a good bayan. It will produce an effect. अहमद फराज का ये शेर. ये क्या कि सबसे बयां दिल की हालतें करनी. ये क्या कि सबसे बयां दिल की हालतें करनी. फराज तुझको ना आई मोहब्बतें करनी. Beautiful couplet. Approximate translation is, what is this? The style of describing the condition of your heart to everyone. What kind of style is this? Faraz, it seems you do not know how to love. By extension, you do not go on describing the condition of your heart when you are in love to everyone. You hide it, you conceal it. बहादुर शाह जफर का ये शेर. हाले दिल क्यों कर करें अपना बयां अच्छी तरह. हाले दिल क्यों कर करें अपना बयां अच्छी तरह. रूबरू उनके नहीं चलती ज़बां अच्छी तरह. So the approximate translation is, how and why should I detail all the ins and outs of my heart to her? The fact is, when I'm face to face with her, my tongue does not work well, right? And hence, how and why would I be able to explain or detail the ins and outs of my heart to her? दाग दहलवी का ये शेर. सुनकर मेरा फसाना ए गम उसने ये कहा. सुनकर मेरा फसाना ए गम उसने ये कहा. हो जाए झूठ सच यही खूबी बयां की है शेर बहुत प्यारा है. The approximate translation is, once I had detailed, described or narrated to her the story, the pain-filled story of my heart. This is what she said. To make a lie seem like a truth is testament to a good bayan or a good description. So by extension, पूरी कहानी जो मैंने अपने गम की उनको सुनाई, उन्होंने ये कह दिया, आपका बयां बखूबी है, बिकॉज आपने सच झूठ को सच की तरह पोर्ट्रे कर दिया. मिर्जा गालिब का ये शेर, क्या बयां करके मेरा रोएंगे यार, क्या बयां करके मेरा रोएंगे यार, मगर आशुफ्ता बयानी मेरी. So the approximate translation is, what else will my friends remember once I'm gone and cry? What else will they remember once I'm gone and cry? Just this grief and pain-filled descriptions and narrations of mine, other than these grief and pain-filled descriptions of mine. And last one, Sahir होशियारपुरी का शेर, कौन कहता है मोहब्बत की जुबां होती है, ये हकीकत तो निगाहों से बयां होती है. So the approximate translation is, who says that love has a tongue, that love has a language? This is one truth, one reality that manifests, gets described, gets narrated only by eyes, not by the tongue. Okay, so that takes care of bayan. So, ये मसाइल-ए-तसव्वुफ, ये तेरा बयां गालिब. Moving on to the next line, तुझे हम वली समझते. So, wali is a saint, a wise one, sometimes also used to symbolize a friend or a close acquaintance of God or of the king. Moving on to the last word, Bada Khwar. Now, Bada is booze, wine, spirits, liquor, and Khwar is disgrace, dishonor, shame. But Khwar is also used for eating, devouring, or drinking. And interestingly, Khwar in both its meanings, whether it is disgrace or drinking, kind of fits in this couplet, right? So, Badakhwar technically would be addicted to drinking wine, but by extension, disgraced because of drinking wine would also work here. Now, Allama Iqbal का ये शेर, गुजर गया अब वो दौरे साकी, गुजर गया अब वो दौरे साकी कि छुप के पीते थे पीने वाले, बनेगा सारा जहां में खाना, हर कोई बादाख्वार होगा. So the approximate translation is, gone are the times. Gone are the times when one used to hide and drink in secrecy. Now are the times when the whole world is almost an open mekhana or tavern where wine is served, and everyone is a badakhwar, or everyone is addicted to drinking wine. दाग दहलवी का ये शेर, जो कैफियत देखनी है जाहिद तो चल के तू देख मैं कदे में, जो कैफियत देखनी है जाहिद तो चल के तू देख मैं कदे में, बहक बहक कर मजे मजे की सुनाएंगे बादाख्वार बातें. Beautiful couplet. So the approximate translation is, Zahid is the learned one, the religious one, the pious one, right? So the poet is telling Zahid, if you want to listen to great narratives, great descriptions, great stories, then come to the tavern. Come to the tavern, because there these Badakwar, these people addicted to wine, will in their intoxication detail to you such amazing incidents, such amazing narratives that you would really enjoy it. And then last sher, Shaukat Thanvi ka, दो आतिशा न सही, दो आतिशा न सही, दर्द ही सही साकी, दो आतिशा न सही, दर्द ही सही साकी, जो उनमें फर्क करे कुछ, वो बादाख्वार नहीं. Beautiful couplet, probably one of my favorite in this episode. So the approximate translation is that if you cannot give me wine, cupbearer, then give me pain instead. If you cannot pour wine into my goblet, then pour pain instead. Because a person who thinks these two things are different is not a real, authentic wine addict. For a true, real, authentic wine addict, it's the same thing, whether he's drinking wine or he's drinking pain. So that takes care of all the key words in this couplet. Lot of concepts, right? So let's get into the impressions now. First line, ये मसाइल-ए-तसव्वुफ, ये तेरा बयां गालिब. Now the first thing which seems very interesting in this couplet to us is the fact that Ghalib has used these two words, right? Masail and Bayan. And we went into these words in great detail just a few minutes back. Masail is questions, problems, propositions. Bayan is description, narration, detailing of something. So we have questions in this line, we have explanations in this line, but we do not have answers. Now, I find it very interesting that Ghalib mentions questions, he mentions descriptions, but he does not mention answers. DGMZ's understanding is that answers are omitted from the sher by Ghalib intentionally, because usually, as per Ghalib's style, he would leave the answers to be figured out by his readers. That was the job of the reader. And depending where the reader was spiritually, intellectually, emotionally, experience-wise, the answer would differ from reader to reader. So that is one thing which comes to mind. First things first, right? As soon as we read the couplet, that the line does not have jawab in it. Answers are not part of the couplet. Now, this sher is the last couplet of the Ghazal, which is called the Maqta. And Maqta, by definition, is the last couplet of a Ghazal in which the pseudonym of the poet appears. And of course, we do have the pseudonym for Ghalib appearing here. We see Ghalib here. But Ghalib has used the Maqta of this Ghazal to go beyond just introducing his pseudonym. It seems that he has repurposed the Maqta to introduce his multifaceted persona. Not just putting in his name in such a way that it gels or works with the entire couplet without disrupting it at all, but also using the couplet to show his multifaceted personality, the personality of a poet, the personality of a mystic, the personality of a philosopher, personality of a thinker, personality of an intellectual, and lastly, that of a wine lover. clever, clever, very clever. We think it is very cleverly done, right? मक्ते का जो repurposing किया है गालिब ने, काबिल तारीफ है. Now, if you want to get into different types of, uh, you know, sections or elements of a ghazal, also this multifaceted persona of Ghalib, the DGMC introduction episode is a good episode to get into that if you're interested. Now, ये मसाइल तसव्वुफ, ये तेरा बयां गालिब. अब जो बयां था उसी के तो कायल है ना सब. गालिब का जो बयां है उसके लिए 1, 2, 10 एपिसोड भी कम है. बट यहाँ पर क्योंकि इतना कैटेगोरिकली, इतना स्पेसिफिकली, आउटराइट इट हैज बीन कॉल्ड आउट, राइट, द बयां, गालिब स्टाइल of detailing or describing, we cannot omit getting into that style of his, for this couplet as we are doing our impression. So Ghalib in this couplet beautifully captures his unique style of engaging with his readers. And we have seen that style play out across many DGMC episodes, right? Now, some unique things that we always highlight whenever we come across them in an episode are, number one, questions which are answers, or answers which are posed as questions, right? हमने in the last couplet itself we saw a very simple example of that, right? उसे कौन देख सकता, वो जो शेर है, उसे कौन देख सकता कि यगाना है वो यकता, कि दुई की बू भी होती तो कहीं दो चार होता, right? उसे कौन देख सकता, sounds like a question, but by extension the answer is in it. उसे कौन देख सकता, by extension उसे कोई नहीं देख सकता, right? So ये एक बड़ा interesting style था बयान का, which was very unique to Ghalib. Number 2, questions left open for interpretation. ये तो हम लोग हर बार ही देखते हैं, right? Questions which can be answered in multiple ways by the reader. Some readers find it taxing, some find it enjoyable, but the fact remains that mental gymnastics were very unique to Ghalib. When you are reading something that Ghalib is saying, asking, or stating, you will be introduced to multiple interpretations. And the fans of Ghalib enjoy that. They enjoy that. Number 3, Ghalib's wordplay is endearing and enchanting because it's not just wordplay. वो सिर्फ wordplay के लिए wordplay नहीं करते थे, right? He never used to use it like a tool to confuse the reader or to impress on the reader his command on the language. His command on the language was anyways very, very clear. His wordplay was actually play of thoughts. So the wordplay was good. It was par excellence. But the thoughts were equally good, if not more, right? So the reader never felt as if he was dueling with empty words. As a reader, one found themselves dueling with complex emotions, complex thoughts when we read Ghalib's couplets. So they are not empty words. Every word has a vast universe of very evolved thought behind it. And that is what is so appealing. One doesn't mind struggling with the words because one knows once these words are decoded, once we understand these words, we will be able to grasp the thought behind it. So, Ghalib the thinker makes you think. And the fourth point about his style. Now, Ghalib's style or strategy to engage and interact with his readers was primarily done through thought-provoking questions and thought-provoking statements. And this is again something which is very unique. कोई ऐसी बात नहीं करते थे जो कि आप सुन के भूल जाओगे. अगर आप गालिब की बात सुन चुके हो और आप गालिब की बात समझ चुके हो तो बहुत चांसेस हैं कि आप वो बात भूलोगे नहीं. That was the impact. That was the impact. And as he questioned his readers, he in parallel created room to accommodate the possible answers in his poetry. So, ऐसा नहीं है कि बस एक complicated सवाल पूछ लिया and that's it. No, सवाल पूछा and उस शेर को ये काबिलियत देते थे कि चाहे कोई भी जवाब आए वो शेर में सेंस बनाए. अब सोचा समझा जवाब, ऑफ कोर्स, राइट. सो वो जो प्रीएम्प्टिव क्वालिटी थी कि मैं ये कॉम्प्लेक्स सवाल पूछ रहा हूं, रीडर इसके क्या क्या जवाब देगा, what will be the most plausible responses I'm going to get, and will my couplet be able to hold those responses in itself and still continue to make sense and still continue to have an impact. वो भी एक very very unique style. So ये तीन चार बातें very important to go through them when we are talking about गालिब के बयां का style. So गालिब का बयां has, and these are not the only things, but key factors which appeal to us as readers. And of course जब गालिब के बयां की बात हो रही है तो गालिब के बयां पे हजारों शेर लिखे गए हैं उनके बयां को बयां करते हुए, right? So there are many descriptions that describe the way Ghalib used to describe, right? Which is so interesting. And Ghalib himself has written some beautiful couplets that detail his style of detailing. So here are some of them. Number 1. आग ही दामे शनीदन जिस कदर चाहे बिछाए, मुद्दायन का है अपने आलमे तकरीर का. पहली गजल नक्श फरियादी है किसकी शौकिए तहरीर का, उसका शेर है ये. We have posted the impression, and I distinctly remember that when we came to this couplet we said first ghazal of the Diwan, and Ghalib has thrown out an open challenge to all his peers and contemporaries, saying, you can try as much as you want to catch the meaning of my words. You can cast as complex a net as you want to catch the meaning of my words, but my words and their essence is like Anka, that elusive bird that nobody has seen, nobody can touch, nobody can catch. My totality of meaning and essence will always elude you because you're not equipped to understand what I say in totality. So that is Ghalib. That is Ghalib detailing his style and level of complexity in his writings. And then Ghalib का है ये शेर, जिक्र उस परिवश का और फिर बयां अपना. जिक्र उस परिवश का और फिर बयां अपना, बन गया रकीब आखिर था जो रास्ता अपना. So the basic translation is, Ghalib says that when her beauty and my description, my style of description of her beauty come together, we create enemies for ourselves. And basically Ghalib ने तो अपने बयां के बारे में लिखा ही था, बाकी शायरों ने भी गालिब के बयां के बारे में बहुत लिखा है। अब वो लिस्ट बहुत लंबी है, हम लोग सिर्फ 2 शेर लेंगे उसमें से। पहला वाला रघुपति सहाय फिराक गोरखपुरी का ये शेर, अपना ही अकीदा अपना ही अंदाज था उसका, अपना ही अकीदा अपना ही अंदाज था उसका, गालिब कभी मोहताज खुदा ना हुआ. Huge, huge claim. And I mean, amazing. Very well written. So the approximate translation is that he had his own faith and he had his own style. Ghalib never needed any god, right? So the independence of Ghalib's speech, the fact that Ghalib's speech never tried to um, never tried to follow a predefined path. Ghalib's speech was actually free speech, never followed a predefined path. And that is what Firaq Gorakhpuri is detailing here. And then दिलवार फिगार का ये शेर, बिल्कुल हम लोग जिस शेर की बात करें उसी से इंस्पायर्ड, एब्सोल्युटली. गालिब की शख्सियत में महसीन है बेशुमार, गालिब की शख्सियत में महसीन है बेशुमार, ये आदमी वली था ना होता जो बादाख्वार. So same thing that in Ghalib's personality there were so many aspects of wisdom, right? And had this poet not been addicted to drinking wine, he would have been considered a saint, a mystic, a dervish, the wise one, right? So that is the first line of this couplet. Ye Masaail-e-Tasawwuf, ye Tera Bayaan Ghalib. Ghalib is highlighting two aspects of his. In the first line, ye Masaail-e-Tasawwuf, the mystic, the Sufi inside him, the wisdom inside him, both with reference to life and with reference to love. मसाइले तसव्वुफ में गालिब ने कैप्चर किया. एंड दूसरी लाइन ये तेरा बयां गालिब, हियर गालिब इज हाईलाइटिंग हिमसेल्फ एज अ पोएट, द पर्सन हु details, describes, of course, everything, but in this couplet specifically the way he describes the Sufism, the mysticism, the wisdom of his through his poetry. Ghalib says, this is unmatched. Ghalib, this is unmatched. Now moving on to the second line. तुझे हम वली समझते जो ना बाद अख्वार होता. Now, wali, like we had covered before, wali is somebody who is saintly, pious, pure. Ghalib, it is important to highlight here that Ghalib had a complex relationship with God, right? When we are talking about him being a wali, we have to keep in mind the relationship he had with God. All of us have complex relationships with God, but so did Ghalib, right? And like I said, from his first ghazal itself in the Diwan, नक्श फरियादी है किसकी शौकी तहरीर का, Ghalib questions and calls out faith, religion, God as a creator, and his creation on multiple occasions, right from the first ghazal itself. So Ghalib was never shy in calling out or questioning God, right? Masaail-e-Tasawwuf. If in his wisdom, in his mystic and Sufi understanding, he found something which was amiss from God or from what God had created, he would question it. He would question it. ये मसाइल-ए-तसव्वुफ ये तेरा बयां गालिब. He would question that. अब मिर्जा गालिब का आप ये शेर देखिए, ना था कुछ तो खुदा था. बहुत फेमस शेर है, आपने सुना होगा. न था कुछ तो खुदा था, कुछ ना होता तो खुदा होता. न था कुछ तो खुदा था, कुछ ना होता तो खुदा होता. डुबोया मुझको होने ने, ना होता मैं तो क्या होता. We cannot get into the impression, it will be very detailed. We will just quickly do a translation for today's episode. The approximate translation is, when there was nothing, there was God. If there had been nothing, there would still be God. My pitfall, or what defeated me, was me being, or me existing. And I wonder, had I not existed, what would have been. मिर्जा गालिब का एक और शेर, बंदगी में भी वो आजाद ओ खुदबीन है कि हम. बंदगी में भी वो आजाद ओ खुदबीन है कि हम, उल्टे फिराए दरे काबा अगर वाह ना हुआ. So the approximate translation is, even in my faith, even in my worship, I am a free spirit. Free spirit to such an extent that if I was to go to Kaaba and Kaaba doors were closed at that point in time, I would turn around and come back. So again, we will not get into the impression, but that is the approximate translation. And then मिर्जा गालिब का ये शेर, झूल पे झूल दिए जा रहे हैं, झूल पे झूल दिए जा रहे हैं, खुद को बहला रहे हैं. कोई पूछे इनसे कहाँ है खुदा, ये लोग किसे बहका रहे हैं. So the approximate translation is that one deception after the other, one trick after the other, these people are using to delude themselves. Can somebody ask them, where is this God? And why are they using these tricks to delude themselves in believing He is there, that God is there? And then ये बहुत मशहूर शेर गालिब का, हम भी जानते हैं जन्नत की हकीकत, लेकिन दिल के बहलाने को गालिब ये ख्याल अच्छा है. So basically the approximate translation is, we all know the reality of paradise, but it's a good idea that paradise is beautiful, paradise is great. It is a good idea to be used to deceive ourselves while we are here on this earth. So there was in सारे शेरों में एक theme है, right? Either questioning it or outright denying it. But ऐसा नहीं है कि this was the only theme in his poetry. He also paid homage and ode to God on multiple occasions, right? उनका ये शेर जो है, जा दी हुई उसी की थी, जा दी हुई उसी की थी, हक तो यूं है कि हक अदा ना हुआ. So basically the approximate translation is, I gave up my life for him, but the life to begin with was given by him, and hence the fact of the matter is, I did not give up anything for him. I just gave him back what he had to begin with given to me. So तुझे हम वली समझते. So because of the word wali, we got into this interesting dynamic that we see in Ghalib's poetry with God as a creator and his creation. Ghalib used the Sufi and the mystical concepts in his poetry generously. It would be hard to find a ghazal which does not have one one Sufi or mystic concept, right? He was well versed with those concepts, he was well read in those concepts, and he used those concepts beautifully. He weaved them into his poetry, which set him apart from all the Islamic poets of his time, and even after his time, right? The way he weaved these concepts with real life background is something very unique to Ghalib. Now, here is one of DGMZ favorite shares, right? As far as mysticism and Sufism go from Ghalib, we use it a lot, we quote it a lot. आपने सुना होगा if you've been through our episodes. इशरते कतरा है दरिया में फना हो जाना. इतना खूबसूरत उसका पूरा कपलेट की भी जरूरत नहीं, यही लाइन काफी है. इशरते कतरा है दरिया में फना हो जाना. The glory, the magnificence, the ultimate, the penultimate joy for a drop is to merge itself in the river, lose itself in the river. That is a Sufi concept right there. इशरते कतरा है दरिया में फना हो जाना. And then एक और गालिब का शेर, खुद को बेखुदी से भी आगे ले गया हूँ. खुद को बेखुदी से भी आगे ले गया हूँ, खुद ही खुद में निहा हो गया हूँ. So the approximate translation is that I have taken myself beyond myself. I've taken myself beyond myself, and I am going to now lose myself in myself. So basically, the vastness of me is now enough to lose me in it. That is the approximate translation. And ये तो बहुत ही प्यारा शेर है गालिब का. देखियो गालिब से गर उलझा कोई, देखियो गालिब से गर उलझा कोई, है वली पोशीदा और काफिर खुला. So the approximate translation is, watch out, be careful before you tangle with Ghalib. Watch out, be careful before you tangle with Ghalib. He is a hidden saint and a revealed infidel. Ya kafir is a sinner also, right? So his saintliness is hidden and his sin is revealed. So be very careful when you decide to tangle with Ghalib. उनकी पर्सनालिटी को कितनी प्यारी तरह खुद ही कैप्चर किया, और तो कोई शायद कर भी नहीं सकता था इस तरह से. Beautiful couplet that really describes his personality. And then Wali के बाद, of course, last but not the least, Bada Khwar, somebody addicted to drinking. Somebody addicted to drinking wine. And इसमें भी जो यूनिक बात है, अब जैसे कि ड्रिंकिंग, इट्स अ हैबिट, राइट? बट गालिब इस मक्ते में अपने एडिक्शन या अपने लव फॉर वाइन को वही ओहदा दे रहे हैं जो कि वो अपने अंदर के पोइट को दे रहे हैं, अपने अंदर के सूफी को दे रहे हैं, अपने अंदर के मिस्टिक को दे रहे हैं, अपने अंदर के इंटेलेक्ट को दे रहे हैं, इंटेलेक्चुअल को दे रहे हैं, राइट? सो ही is not treating Bada Khwar as a habit, but he is actually identifying himself as a Bada Khwar and positioning Bada Khwar as one of the many identities he has captured in this couplet of himself. ये जो multifaceted persona है, उसका एक aspect, उसका एक facet है Bada Khwar. Bada Khwar is not a habit. Bada Khwar is an identity. And of course, at DGMZ, we have covered many ghazals where Ghalib beautifully weaves mysticism and wisdom into his couplets. couplets which are focused around wine and drinking. Ghazal 9 is already there as part of our episodes. Uska chautha sher, fourth couplet. Dil guzar gaye khayale mein sagar hi sahi. दिल गुजर गाहे ख्याले मैं ओ सागर ही सही गर नफस ज्यादा सरे मंजिल ए तकरीना हुआ. So basically, let the approximate translation is, let my heart be a road that goes through the thoughts of wine and wine goblets. Let the heart be a way or path for the thoughts of wine and wine goblets. If my breath or my life could not carve out a path to mysticism, Sufism, wisdom, piety. And then Ghazal 12, verse 2. Ba kadre zarf hai sakhi khumare tishna kami bhi. Ba kadre zarf hai sakhi khumare tishna kami bhi. जो तू दरियाए में है तो मैं खमियाजा हूँ साहिल का. Basic translation is cupbearer. So my thirst will always match your capacity to serve wine. Always remember, if you are a sea of wine with unlimited uh, ability to dispense wine, then I am the banks of that sea, which will always be able to rein you in, control you in, match your vastness, right? So using wine, using cupbearer, using drinking, but again in a very Sufi mystical way, making you go through multiple concepts, right? Not just drinking. It almost seems that Ghalib disagreed with the common ideology that drinking incapacitated, undermined, or numbed one's potential to think, feel, and understand, and in his case, write beautiful poetry. In this last line of this amazing ghazal, Ye na thi Humaari Qismat, it almost seems, and this is just DGMZ's personal impression, we always specify, we always clarify that these are our own personal impressions, right? So per our understanding, it seems that in this last line, Tujhe hum wali samajhte jo na bada khwar hota, Ghalib states, he's stating that he was denied the credit for the evolved, one of its kind wisdom, mysticism, knowledge, and philosophy he weaved in his poetry about love and life. And he was denied this credit on a technicality. And the technicality was that he loved drinking. He loved drinking wine. The fact was that a lot of what Ghalib said and wrote was very evolved and very technically complex, both in thought and diction. And because of this, it was not easily comprehended or understood by the readers. It was not easily comprehended and understood by his peers or colleagues, if you may. And much of his content was many times discarded as garble of an intoxicated poet by many around Ghalib, readers and peers both. जिनको समझ में नहीं आता था, फिर वो ये कह देते थे कि अरे ये तो पता नहीं क्या बकवास लिखता है, इनकी बात तो यही समझे, हमें तो समझ ही नहीं आती, क्या लिखते हैं, पी के लिखते क्या करते हैं. So there have been many stories where people who could not understand what Ghalib wrote would immediately get into this mode of saying that what Ghalib wrote was incomprehensible, it was garbled, it was senseless. It didn't make any sense. But Ghalib, in his wisdom and in his unique understanding of his talent and caliber, always knew that there was no fault in his content and its accuracy or its exquisiteness. Ghalib knew he was one of his kind. He also knew he was ahead of his times. He also knew that not everybody will have the IQ and EQ to understand what he's writing. Such was his confidence. इनका ये शेर देखिए आप, कर्ज की पीते थे मैं, कर्ज की पीते थे मैं, लेकिन समझते थे कि हाँ, कर्ज की पीते थे मैं, लेकिन समझते थे कि हाँ, रंग लावेगी हमारी फाकाए मस्ती एक दिन. So basically, the approximate translation is, though the drinking was done under credit. He had no money. So though my drinking was done under credit, I always knew and understood that one day, this style of mine, this habit of mine, which searches for joy and cheerfulness in adversity. Fakai masti. Faka is anything which is adverse, which is suboptimal, and masti is cheer, gaiety, joy. So I understood that this habit of mine, this talent of mine, which can look and find cheerfulness and joy in the most adverse circumstances, will reap reap its harvest one day, this unique quality of mine. So that's a beautiful couplet. So that takes care of तुझे हम वली समझते जो ना बादा ख्वार होता, both capturing both aspects of his personality, that of a wali and that of a बादाख्वार. अब इस कपलेट के बारे में एक स्टोरी है जो कि डेफिनेटली हम लोगों को we should get into it, and that's a nice way to end the impression also. So it is said, when Mirza recited this ghazal to the king said, "My friend, if you were not a badakhwar, we would not have considered you a wali still. Even if you were not a badakhwar, we would have not considered you a wali still." And to which Mirza responded, "Your Excellency, I know you consider me a wali even now, though I am a badakhwar. You have only made this remark so I wouldn't become proud of my saintliness, my being a wali." That was the confidence. That was the confidence. And interestingly, like we shared when we were going through the translations of the words, wali translates not only to the wise mystic one, but also a friend of God and or king. So when you keep that in mind, the story becomes even more interesting, right? Because by extension, the king was telling him that, Ghalib, even if you were not addicted to drinking, I would not have considered you a friend, right? A wali is a friend of a king. And Ghalib tells him, "Excellency, I know you consider me a friend, even though I am a badakhwar now. But you are just saying this so that I don't get haughty, I don't get proud of you considering me a friend." Interesting story. Now, I will leave you with one thought. Time does not permit to narrate this ghazal from Ghalib, but it speaks very well to a lot of concepts that we cover today. Therefore, if you are curious and cannot wait for a full-fledged future DGMC podcast episode on this ghazal, I would highly recommend that you access the ghazal just to cement all that we went through today. So the ghazal is कब वो सुनता है कहानी मेरी और फिर वो भी ज़बानी मेरी. If you can find the ghazal, do go through it. You will definitely enjoy it after listening to this episode. Well, that's all I had for today. Like I said, today we have covered one of the longest, most famous ghazals of Ghalib, uh, that we are aware of. Um, and yes, we have a whole playlist dedicated to this ghazal. We took one share at a time per episode, so it has been a long journey. I really appreciate you joining us again and again, week after week, for 11 weeks to finish this ghazal. I hope you enjoyed not just today's episode but the ghazal in entirety. Let us know via comments how you felt about this episode, and of course, like I said, the entire ghazal now that we have completed it. For our new viewers, as always, a very strong recommendation for you to access the episode called TGMC Introduction or Introduction to TGMC. It will give you a good insight into the motivation and inspiration behind this podcast. Uh, Go to the home channel page. That is where you will find all the playlists. One is dedicated to this ghazal, another playlist dedicated to all ghazal episodes, another playlist dedicated to Laila Majnu TGMC miniseries, and many more. So explore them and access the episodes which interest you. I'm going to go ahead and close this episode. I'm sending a lot of love and light to all you viewers, and thanks for watching.